Hello, it's Book Quote Wednesday and the word is Earth. And today I am reading from my short story collection JEAPES JAPES. And this is from a time travel adventure, Winged Chariot, which later gave its title to my time travel novel, set in the same milieu of the home time. And in this story, a refugee from a war no one has ever heard of, and thanks to the home time never will hear of, is trying to hide out in the 18th century. In his time, he was a wanted war criminal, but to the locals, he's a respected medical man and minister who has been using cadavers to teach his parishioners advanced medical skills. But now it's time to move on. All who convert to or become apostates from a cause have a moment of epiphany. In this case, it had been the discovery that the director was, after all, fallible. The man had thought that he could fool his benefactors. The directorate had always been advanced scientifically, but after it took control, the lid was taken off to a select few, the board, and knowledge really started pouring out, a cornucopia for every subdirector. For the subdirector of health, a complete map of the human genome, the artificial synthesis of any form of DNA, strict algorithms determining the placement of chromosomes. If all the other subdirectors were getting this level of stuff for their own departments, he had reasoned, if this treasure trove of data was coming in, then surely the director would not dare to throw it all away again. Surely he would not antagonize his patrons. They had all been there at that meeting of the board when the director finally revealed exactly what was happening, and they had all heard the warnings. But no, the director was greedy. His former protectors had decided that the directorate had to be stopped, and the directorate's enemies had been happy to oblige. Hence the war. And so he had created the AI, a tiny little searcher, barely distinguishable from the myriad that roamed the net. It was innocuous enough to brave even the portion of the net controlled by the enemy. It took time, but after weeks of patient search, it came up with the best of all the possible options. W. Morgan, D.D. Oxon, a clergyman who took over the parish of Portperron and who made no further impact on the world. He might have died 30 years later, he might have died the next day. That information had been lost. Dr. Morgan was a man of utter historical inconsequence, a man with a minimal impact on time and space. No sign of any marriage, not even a recorded death, an open-ended future. So if a man were to masquerade as Morgan, he could keep his head down, do nothing, and never have to worry about conforming to predetermined events. Morgan was one of history's non-entities. Perfect. He tucked the information away in one corner of his mind and quietly made plans. Scene change, back to the 18th century. Reaction set in back in the sane surroundings of the vicarage. Cole's hands shook. He was high on adrenaline and fatigue. I can't believe it, Dr. Morgan, he kept repeating. I can't believe it. We cut her. Morgan soothed him, placing a large glass of brandy in the man's hands and sitting him down. There's a book you won't have read, Mr. Cole, Morgan said. Claudius the God. Cole looked blank. The Emperor Claudius? The same. He asked about his personal surgeon. Where did the man learn his skills? From your brother, Caesar, he is told. My brother wasn't a surgeon, Claudius protests. No, Caesar, he is told. Your brother was a successful general who fought many campaigns and left many bodies. Or words to that effect. The Emperor's own surgeon learned his trade by cutting up corpses on the battlefield. How else did anyone ever get to learn about surgery? And you did so well. I did, didn't I? Cole looked down at his glass, then back at Morgan. His mouth twitched into a smile. It's wonderful, really, isn't it? Like the powers of a god. The human body is a wonderful thing, Mr. Cole, and it's a privilege to help it. Listen, Cole, I've looked at the building blocks of life. I've played with them, rearranged them. I can never take human beings seriously again, and now you've got it too. Why are you leaving, Dr. Morgan? Cole asked suddenly. The brandy was giving him a confidence he didn't usually have. You could stay here and do the operations. The folk would love you, you know. What gives you the idea I'm leaving, Mr. Cole? Morgan said quietly. Oh, everything. You're always talking like you won't be here. Mr. Cole, I'm just urging you to secrecy. But why, Dr. Morgan? If you know these things, you should tell others. I know, but my fame would spread and people would hear of me, and that would be bad. There are other people who want to find and kill me. But why? Cole persisted. You're a saint, Dr. Morgan. The things you could do. What did you do to those people? I cured their cancer and I did other things. He bit his lip to shut himself up. Other things? What things? I worked for a man who asked me to help him. Morgan found himself seduced by the mixture of brandy and a warm, attentive audience for the first time in years. Would you believe people who can breathe underwater? Virtually undetectable by sonar. Or live in a vacuum? Ideal for satellite work. All that. Oh, you're having me on, Dr. Morgan. Cole waved his hands about vaguely. But whatever you did, all those clever things, they must have really loved you. You come from heaven, Dr. Morgan. You're a saint. Yes, well, they didn't want to do those things. That was the problem. I don't understand you, Dr. Morgan. I really don't. Morgan gave a wan smile. Do you know how to make God laugh, Mr. Cole? Can't say I do, Dr. Morgan. Tell him your plans, Mr. Cole. Tell him your plans. Cole sat absorbing this wisdom in silence until Morgan yawned. 2 hours to dawn, Mr. Cole. We should get some sleep. Of course, Dr. Morgan. Scene change again, point of view. It was the way they were defeated that hurt so much. He wasn't much involved in the actual strategy, so he only picked up rumours. But what rumours? Captured prisoners who had never heard of the Directorate and were convinced they are fighting someone else, who spoke no language known on Earth, who had never heard of other captured prisoners either. Then there was the way that the enemy were never where they were supposed to be, or a strike would be launched against a division said to be in such and such a place, verified by satellite, but which suddenly wasn't. Or a whole new army would appear out of nowhere, again, usually with only the vaguest idea of who it was fighting. Every conceivable enemy that the Directorate might have had, it did have. One day he found out why. Scene change again. He had thought long and hard about it. He had agonized over every point in his argument. He liked it in Porth Perrin. It was good for him. A man with his knowledge and experience could help these honest, unsophisticated people in 1,000 small, unimportant ways that all added up. He liked having his self-respect back. Yet at his back he always heard, then. What could they do with time? He had no idea, but he could imagine. He could picture shockwaves from his actions in Porth Perrin rippling up and down the timelines. He could imagine them sensing it and coming for him. He had to leave. Cole was coming on fine. Morgan had set him some exercises on a couple of fresh bodies, pretending that there were growths on the lungs, on the stomach and the neck. The man could cope, and should improve with practice. An unexplained disappearance would be careless. It would cause ripples. People would hear of it, and it would certainly find its way into written records. What Morgan planned was far better. A sudden killing, perfectly explicable and entirely unmysterious. And the best of it was, his conscience need not groan under yet another death, for no one need actually die. He steered his cart along one of the twisty, narrow lanes that held this far-flung county together. As far as Porth Perrin was concerned, he was riding into St Austell for a day or two. What little he could plausibly take with him was in the back, mostly clothes, but also a spade and some lamp oil, and, of course, the gold that he had brought with him from the Directorate. Without that, he was nothing in any time. He came to the right place about 5 miles out of the village. He tied the horse up and left the cart by the wayside. The spot he wanted was a short distance from the road. The charred patch where he had burnt his clothes had disappeared, washed away in the rain. The mound was still there, under a gorse bush. He thought again of Anne Tressida as he dug the body up. It was only a few feet down. The real Dr. Morgan emerged into the daylight again, and his replacement began to clothe the body in his own garments. They were an imperfect fit, but the oil would make that incidental. Decomposition and the total lack of facial similarity would also become a small matter in the blaze. He had regretted the killing at the time, but what else could he do? One more death, just one more, and that would be all. No one else need die at his hands ever again. The device that Carradine and his team had covertly assembled and which had brought doom on the Directorate had worked well. It had dumped him almost at this spot, close to the road that his research showed Morgan would have taken as he arrived in Port Perrin. He had waved the man and his horse down. Anyone finding the anonymous body would have blamed it on robbers, and that part of the plan still held. Poor Dr. Morgan, waylaid by the highwayman and burned in an attempt to get rid of the evidence. He pulled on his stout walking boots and stood, reaching for the oil. A clap of thunder blew him to the ground again. Groggily, he looked up and shook his head. A dazed figure 10 feet away from him was also climbing to his feet. Whoever the man was, he had been through hard times, to judge by the grime on his face and his tattered suit. "Carradine!" Morgan blurted. The figure blinked at him. "Hi." The voice was harsher than he remembered. "Didn't get very far, did you?" Carradine, once sub-director for science, looked down at the body. "Who's this poor sod then? Someone else he ran out on?" "Carradine, what? Oh, don't bother." Carradine sat down and looked immensely tired. "I've gone through the stage of wanting to kill you. I'd have done the same in your place." He shook his head. "The time displacer. Why didn't I think of that?" He looked almost admiring. "I designed the thing, didn't I? The perfect escape." "Well, maybe not perfect. They tracked you down and sent me after you." "They?" "The home time people, you cretin. They said charges would... Oh, hell, look. Apparently we had already surrendered that night you ran out. It would only have been a matter of time before we were found. Well, I was found, and I was identified. They'd already captured the Institute. You must have been just ahead of them when you got there. The coordinates on the displacer were still set for the 18th century, so they knew someone had used it, and they could guess who. And they sent me after you because I could identify you, which I have done. And now, old buddy, we are returning to the ex-directorate, where you will face the music and all charges against me will be dropped." Slowly, Carradine drew a gun from out of his jacket. His tone had been jocular, but there was no sign of that old friendship in his eyes. Morgan swallowed, but for some reason felt no urge to flee or fight. This seemed strangely right to him. "How do we get back?" he said. "These coordinates will be swamped with a recall field every 24 hours until we turn up. Since I don't fancy spending 24 hours in this hole, I suggest you take us somewhere. Where's the nearest town?" "Port Perrin is 30 minutes in that direction, but I've just left." "Take us there, then." "I said I just left." The gun whirred ominously as Carradine touched the cocking stud. A bullet had fed into the launch chamber and was pointing directly down the barrel at Morgan's heart. "I'll take you," Morgan said quickly. "Just don't worry with that thing about where it can be seen," he added. Remember, you can buy my books at www.benjeapes.com. See you next time.